For many drivers, Interstate 95 is a connector, leading travelers through Jacksonville to popular tourist attractions in Florida. But in the 1990s, I-95 had also become a pipeline for cocaine distribution.
The drugs would come up through South Florida, and then it could go up the corridor in 95.
Jacksonville had become a drug detour.
The complaints were flowing to the sheriff constantly about apartment complex selling drugs, street corners being taken over by people.
I mean, we were arresting dozens of people every day.
The targets became the two men who had clawed their way to the top of the drug chain. But the deeper investigators dug,
I think we were all shocked.
the more they couldn't believe where their drug investigation was leading them.
Home invasions, carjackings, robbery, except it was being done by police officers.
For the first time, we are now hearing from the team that exposed a network of betrayal,
someone that's, supposed to be protecting us.
heartache,
This entire experience has been very painful.
and distrust.
The boldness, the greed, the abuse of power.
At what point do you believe that a police officer could be involved in committing murder?
Florida Justice Betraying the Badge starts now.
I'm Jennifer Waugh. As federal investigators were fighting a crack cocaine epidemic in Jacksonville 25 years ago, they stumbled upon a conversation during a secret wiretap between a pair of drug dealers. So surprising, so seemingly outlandish, they thought it had to be wrong. 5 words heard during that phone call turned a narcotics investigation into a police corruption case that revealed a stunning web of deceit spun by officers within the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
Long-distance running takes dedication, stamina, hard work, and a persistence to never give up. The same qualities that define Jim Clint's work ethic as an assistant United States attorney prosecuting drug traffickers in the 1990s.
Drug cases made up probably 80% of the cases in the U.S. Attorney's Office, so it was a priority for us.
He worked with a team.
My name's Sheila Smith Clint. I was a group supervisor for the Drug Enforcement Administration in Jacksonville, Florida.
My name's Richard True, and at the time I was a narcotics detective for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, assigned to the DEA unit in Jacksonville.
At the time, crack cocaine was big business.
Our pace was just to go out and put as many drug dealers as you could put in jail in a day's time.
Kilo of cocaine, $30,000, $40,000 back then. A lot of money, a lot of cash.
I can remember, picking up grocery bags full of money and just taking it to the property room and counting it there. Drugs, same thing. A lot of drugs that you would just scoop up and pick off as they were running through the back to try to get rid of it.
In the late 90s, many of the drug sales were linked to Abdul Robinson and Derek Smith. Their street names?
Blue and Smiley were so notorious that JSO sent out flyers to road patrol officers to keep an eye out in the neighborhoods where they were believed to operate, just so that you could try to have as many sets of eyes as possible on Blue and Smiley.
Robinson, aka Blue, had been charged with murder 3 times, and Smith had kidnapping, battery, and attempted murder on his record. But when their names came across Jim Clint's desk, both were still on the street.
It seemed that a lot of cases would go away because witnesses would not want to cooperate.
We just couldn't get into them. You got to wait for someone to make an introduction and get you into the organization.
When that finally happened, Jim Clint convinced a judge to approve a wiretap of their phones.
We went from the undercover buy-in to where they spoke freely and stuff about drugs to the wiretap, turning on and all of a sudden everything's in code.
Code?
Did you find that that was suspicious?
Yeah, we did find it suspicious.
What kind of code are we talking about?
Just certain things, you know, cocaine may have, cooking crack cocaine may have been washing clothes.
It might be, you know, we need to feed the dogs tonight. Do you have any dog food?
And what does that stand for?
That would, I mean, our distributors need cocaine or crack cocaine, and the dog food is the drug.
The team wondered, were Abdul Robinson and Derek Smith just being overly cautious when they suddenly started talking in code to each other? Or was something else going on? The answer came the summer of 1999.
Hello.
As Detective Richard True listened to Smiley on the phone. 5 words uttered during that call would ignite an investigation the likes of which had not been seen in Jacksonville.
Be careful what you say. The blue uniform is listening.
A leak.
A leak, yes, yes.
What did you think?
Well, you can only think that they're tied in with the police somehow.
But who? There were some 1,500 officers with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in 1999, but only about 40 worked in narcotics, undercover. They were close. Their lives often depended on each other.
The detective by the name of Eric Sinclair, who worked in the narcotics unit, had been acting a little odd in the narcotics unit, and it was suspected, just because of some information that some confidential informants had passed on, that he might be putting the business of the police out on the street. So he quickly became suspect number 1.
Did you believe it?
Of course not. I mean, no, you don't want to believe anything like that.
Officer Eric Sinclair is a Jacksonville native. He grew up on the east side, a tough side of town, graduated from Andrew Jackson High School, earned a bachelor's degree in police administration, and became a member of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in 1993, transferring to the narcotics unit in 1997. In just 6 years' time, he had received 17 letters of commendation and appreciation, with a series of glowing evaluations. Among the accolades, Officer Sinclair was credited for ridding the Sherwood Forest neighborhood of drug dealers and helping solve the murder of a 20-year-old college student. He was considered a model police officer. While Detective True, who knew Sinclair, was stunned to think he could be leaking information to these drug dealers, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jim Clint was not entirely surprised. He also prosecuted public corruption cases, and just months earlier, another Jacksonville police officer, Carl Kahn, had been indicted on drug trafficking charges. And a few years earlier, in 1993,
the man Nassau County for years trusted to enforce the law is now under arrest for breaking it.
Sheriff Lori Ellis was indicted for the same reasons. He was a sheriff in a county just north of Jacksonville, Nassau.
Federal prosecutors say it was a carefully set up scheme to distribute illegal drugs that netted Ellis hundreds of thousands of dollars in drug profits.
The sheriff's participation, as alleged here, in a scheme to distribute drugs for profit within his county not only violates the public trust, but also strikes at the heart of law enforcement and the judicial system in this country.
So a corrupt cop was not unheard of in Northeast Florida. Clint was not about to just brush off what this drug dealer had said during the wiretap, despite Officer Sinclair's reputation.
I knew we had to look into it, and we had to do it aggressively.
He took his team's suspicions to Sinclair's boss, Jacksonville Sheriff Nat Glover.
What was the sheriff's response?
The sheriff, along with the people he was with from his department, they were reluctant to believe or buy into the idea that Eric Sinclair would do something like this. I mean, Eric Sinclair was He was a good narcotics detective. He was well liked by everyone. He was smart. He was an aggressive police officer. But of course, our point was it's not time to decide whether we believe it or not. What we wanted to do was we wanted at that point to put together a separate task force focused on trying to determine if there had been a breach of trust or a breach of confidence.
Clint says the sheriff did eventually agree to assign some of his officers to the task force.
Yeah, my name is John Zipper. At the time, I was a robbery detective with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and I was invited up to the Undersheriff's office by the then Undersheriff John Gordon, and he said, "I have a special assignment for you." And I told him I didn't think I wanted to take part of that.
So first, what did he tell you?
He didn't give me an opportunity to turn it down. He said, "I didn't ask you, I'm telling you."
No one in the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office wanted to investigate one of their own, especially an officer whose own supervisor had described him as energetic, hardworking, dedicated.
But my thought was, this will be a short-lived thing, we'll be in and out, and everything will be okay, but that's not what happened.
For months, police have been investigating the drug activity of these three men, Abdul Robinson, Derek Smith, and Dondrick Bates. Police believe that the three may be responsible for selling nearly a ton of cocaine near the area of King and Myrtle Streets on the northwest side.
By August 1999, Sheriff Glover, along with Assistant U.S. Attorney Jim Clint, announced Blue and Smiley have been indicted on federal drug charges.
I want the people to know who've been intimidated by these thugs that they're in jail, and we intend to keep them in jail.
It did not take long for them to start talking about Officer Eric Sinclair.
I think they knew in consultation with their attorneys that they really only had one way. I won't say out because there was really no way out, but the only way to mitigate the sentences they faced was to cooperate. And so they decided to cooperate pretty quickly, I would say within a matter of days.
As Clint and Sheriff Glover answered reporter questions about the drug indictments, it becomes clear the two have revealed enough to suggest there is a leak within the walls of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
I'm concerned that there has been a breach of confidence in our office internally, and I've instructed the U.S. Attorney's Office, the DEA, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and the Multi-Agency Task Force to pursue that possibility vigorously.
While no one will say how police jeopardized this case, the whole matter is still under investigation, and it could lead to more charges. We also understand that some of the events could have put other police officers in danger.
We did detect some breaches of confidence as far back as December of last year related to a number of ongoing covert investigations, and so we're pursuing that investigation.
Which ultimately reveals this well-respected police officer had been on Blue and Smiley's payroll for months.
It was supposed to be a weekly payment, but it ended up being sporadic, and they may have paid him 5 or 6, 7 times.
I believe it was $500 at a time for information.
What the team did not expect is that was just the beginning of Sinclair's betrayal. Blue and Smiley had also given the team another name.
An individual by the name of Daryl Crowden. His nickname was 8-Ball.
They also had information about something else.
They mentioned a robbery outside of a bank on 44th Street. Someone coming out of the bank with a lot of cash who worked at a convenience store.
A story about a bank customer who had been robbed of tens of thousands of dollars more than a year earlier, in May 1998. The security guard on duty at the bank at that time was Officer Eric Sinclair. During our next episode, Catching a Dirty Cop.
I have to say, in the 20 years I worked at DEA, that was probably one of the scariest nights.
The more the team digs.
But he doesn't want to come anywhere near downtown.
the more they begin to question who can they trust.
We became suspicious that at least 2 of the JSO officers who were involved in the investigation were passing along information.
And how far does the police corruption reach?
And I think we were all shocked.
So at what point do you believe that a police officer could be involved in committing murder?
Florida justice betraying the badge continues.